Okay, well, we're all here, and this is just some of us. This is our wonderful staff, some of whom you've seen. We're led and supported by our mayor and council. Mayor Karen Holman is here. Councilmember Tom Du Bois is here. Former council members Peter Dreckmeyer and other folks. And then how many of you all are Palo Alto citizens who are here? Okay, come on, let's see those hands up. Okay, a lot of folks here. Obviously, it takes a whole village to make this sort of thing happen. We like to think of ourselves as a startup city in response to the sort of startup mentality that has defined this valley, and in particular, Palo Alto. So to be relevant in our community, we've got to act like the companies that have helped shape our city. And we're like a startup. We're small but mighty. We're known around the world, and there's only 65,000 people who live in our city. And we see that our role is to do the right thing, but also, given the advantages that we have and the energy and perspective we have as a city, is to pilot initiatives that maybe other cities can't, with the goal of ultimately modeling that in a way that we can show that these things can be done, and ultimately we can scale these things up and affect the whole world. Really, that's how audacious what it is that we're trying to do. And we've signed some smart city partnerships with the Yangpu district in Shanghai of 2 million people, an innovation center, Heidelberg, Germany, Enschede, the Netherlands, on how we start to be thinking about knowledge transfer, about what cities can do to change the world. I mean, we've got outmoded language right now about international issues. There aren't international issues now. There are interlocal issues in the world. The world has completely changed, and the world will change by the actions of cities living in real places and local places. Obviously, we need state legislation, regulation, national incentives, but all of the changes that are taking place around the planet right now are taking place in local communities in cities. And it's why it's extremely important that a city like ours is willing to pilot and test and show the way. And our team is just an example of this. And we won't rest. I mean, we're after continuous improvement. So you heard this point that we achieved carbon neutrality in our electricity generation, not as a municipal government, but as a community in 2013. So we're looking at how do we look at fuel switching from natural gas. 2 years ago, we were getting complaints from the solar installers that we were like one of the worst jurisdictions to deal with. It was taking 143 days to get a permit for solar installation. It now takes 1 day. We're now the most solar and EV-ready city because we have a team and we have a council and a community that urges us to not to overcome obstacles and to be upfront and honest about the deficiencies that we've got and the changes that we need to make. So we know that what we do can have impact, but we know whatever we do is not going to solve the climate crisis on its own. We can't even address sea level rise in the Bay Area by ourselves as a city. But we're completely committed to leading, doing our part, and we're extremely grateful to Acterra for this recognition. It means a tremendous amount to our council and to our citizens and to our staff to be recognized for these efforts. And I love being in the company of folks who have language, the vocabulary like Tinker Labs and community choice. I want to get some of those Google flame retardant couches so that our staff is prone to spontaneously combust due to all of the criticism we get about not moving fast enough. Those things could come in really handy. But again, like Annie's, we have a long way to go. So if we're at the end, would you guys indulge me in stepping out of my city manager mode and showing another dimension of my personality? I'm also a mediocre poet, if that's okay. But it's relevant, and I'm speaking in my own voice here, but I think it speaks effectively for our entire staff and the perspective we have. So this is a little poem I wrote a couple years ago called Carbon Footprint. And I wrote it, so I was driving in the car, and I heard this little talk on NPR about this doctor in North Carolina who had retired, and she was living with absolutely zero carbon footprint. And so I was reflecting upon this, and I think it's an adequate representation of what we all have to confront with. It's called carbon footprint. So it says she lives in a 12 by 12 shack with no carbon footprint. A doctor, 60 years old, proving to herself and us that it can be done. That she can live small enough to leave no harmful trace of her being on the land and the waters and air that other life will drink and breathe. The rainwater collects on her small roof and runs down the pipe into her cistern. The permaculture landscape she has carefully cultivated circles her house, yielding wildness in the garden that feeds her and those friends and visitors who find their way up the Smoky Mountain to the end of the road. Who needs room inside when one is nested so safely in the natural world? But as much as I love nature and could wish for a simple life, where my imprint too could be so slight as to be barely visible while I am here, and accepting my scattered ashes and burned bone, leaving no carbon remnants behind to cloud and darken my grandchildren's lives. This is not for me. My experiment is the city where we must live, the 7, 8, 9 billion of us, living imperfectly and much worse. The city is a reminder, is a testament to this truth. We cannot escape from each other. I'm destined to ruin the world, or at least do my part to save it. On behalf of the City of Palo Alto, thank you so much for this recognition.